absolute moment of your passing is often understood differently in different parts of the world. The discrepancies mostly boil down to either cardiopulmonary, which is essentially heart death, or brain death, when your heart stops beating or when your brain stops functioning. The tricky aspect, however, is that the legal definition of death isn't universally set, creating something of a gray area between the two. In some cases, that gray area is partly to blame for the stories we're about to encounter. In other cases, malpractice is to blame, or simply unexpected, even unparalleled situations. Meanwhile, the accepted signs of death can be misinterpreted as well. Nevertheless, and whatever the reason, these are some of the most shocking examples of people waking up after they've been declared dead. First, to the case of Walter Williams, a man from Mississippi who in 2014 was found unresponsive in his home and declared dead at the scene. A short while later, Williams was taken to a local funeral home, where embalmers began preparing his body for burial. To everyone's astonishment, however, he started moving and breathing. The medical community later attributed his resurrection to a condition known as Lazarus syndrome, where the heart spontaneously starts beating again even after failed attempts at resuscitation. What's unusual, though, is that no one's sure exactly how the Lazarus syndrome works, only that it is extremely rare. Unfortunately, Williams' second life was short-lived, as he died just 15 days after coming back around. But in the intervening time, he was reportedly healthy enough to spend it conscious and talking with his family. Next, the incredible story of Lyudmila Steblitskaya, a Russian woman in her early 60s. Her doctors declared her dead after a short stay in a hospital in 2012. She was then placed in a morgue, and preparations for her funeral had begun. Members of her family had even reportedly ordered for her grave to be dug. But there was a dramatic U-turn when her daughter arrived at the hospital to say her final goodbyes, only to discover that her mother was now alive and conscious. What's especially amazing about this, however, is that Steblitskaya had spent 3 days in the morgue in the intervening time, with her body kept in freezing temperatures until she fortunately awoke just moments before her own autopsy. Our third case is the in-coffin reawakening of Angelou Hayes. In 1937, Frenchman Angelou Hayes was involved in a motorcycle accident that left him with severe head injuries. Soon after, doctors declared him dead, and according to reports, he was promptly buried. However, it transpired that Hayes had only slipped into a deep coma, and when his body was exhumed, reportedly following question marks over an insurance claim, Hayes was discovered inside, but alive. It's thought that after his accident, his breathing had been so shallow that it hadn't even registered on the recording devices of the time. But eventually, after some weeks of rehabilitation, Hayes went on to live a long life, again defying the odds and again confounding medical professionals. Case number 4, Antebellum, China, where in 2012, a 95-year-old woman shocked her community by seemingly returning to life 6 days after having died. Li Zhufeng's story made headlines all over the world when she was first found unresponsive in her home by neighbors, and after multiple attempts to revive her, was declared dead. As per the local custom, Li Zhufeng's body was then placed in an open coffin for a period of time to allow those who knew her to pay their respects. There was seemingly nothing unusual about the situation until the 6th day, when visitors were confused to find the coffin suddenly empty. According to reports, Li Zhufeng had simply woken up, stepped out of her own casket, and was found by her friends in her kitchen busily cooking. Our penultimate story is that of Velma Thomas, who first suffered a severe heart attack at her home in West Virginia in 2008. According to reports, she also fell victim to multiple other cardiac arrests en route to and inside the hospital where doctors would ultimately declare her dead. It's said that she was clinically dead with zero brain activity for more than 17 hours and that her life support was switched off. But then, when doctors were preparing Thomas's body for organ donation, the procedure was swiftly halted because, despite the apparent impossibility, she started to breathe again. As with Walter Williams, Velma Thomas's experience has largely been put down to an example of the Lazarus syndrome. Although again, medical professionals just aren't sure exactly how it was that she managed to pull through. And finally, to the frozen miracle of Jean Hilliard. Hilliard was found frozen literally solid in sub-zero temperatures in Minnesota. After her car had broken down, she had gone to find help, but got caught in a blizzard and was discovered 6 hours later, literally frozen stiff. When she was brought to the hospital, she was in such a bad way that her body temperature was reportedly too low to register on a standard thermometer. Given the situation, her doctors very nearly declared her dead, but her family insisted on keeping her body at the hospital. And incredibly, Hilliard did soon begin to thaw. Then, after a few hours, she regained consciousness. Her astounding recovery challenged conventional notions of when a person is truly beyond revival, because when she arrived at the hospital, her body was literally lifeless. But after only a few hours, that life had returned in full. In all of these cases, we see the extraordinary and unpredictable nature of life, even after someone finds themselves declared dead. And while each story is unique, they collectively contribute to the broader discussion about the limits of medical certainty and the potential for unexpected recoveries. There are huge ethical implications here to challenge our understanding of death and to underscore the need for continued research into when it really is the point of no return. For now, what's important to remember is that, while there are yet more examples out there, waking up after being pronounced dead is still an extremely rare phenomenon. For the overwhelming majority of the time, there is no reason to doubt a diagnosis of death. And what's clear is that in the cases when mistakes have been made, there was at least some time enough following the death to allow for a miraculous revival. For all the people that we've covered in this video, they found themselves in a highly unusual position. For them, death actually wasn't the end. To some extent, it might be said that they lived through the experience of dying. Sometimes they were able to survive for just a short while more. Other times they went on to live long lives that they might have otherwise been denied. But their stories all stand as testament to the fact that medical science, for all its immeasurable advancements, does still encounter situations that challenge even our most fundamental understandings of life. Looking into the future, and technologists might expect any and all confusion over death to be avoided in the coming generations, as we edge ever closer to genuine immortality in whichever guise. But for now, this seeming gray area between life and death is of extreme importance, because while it doesn't happen often, it seems that it is possible to visit death and return.